Hi, we're on week 2 of digital morning work. So again, if you're watching this video, please make sure that you've solved all the problems on the morning worksheet first and then taken the haiku quiz to check your work. And then this is just for if you were struggling on some of the questions or you got them right maybe and you're not sure how, or you just were really confused. This is to help you out, okay? So number 1 says a box has a length of 14 centimeters, a width of 8 3/10 centimeters, and a height of 3 centimeters. What is the volume of the box? So remember that with volume, we're thinking about the space that fills up a 3D object. And what we've worked on is a 3D rectangular prism. So to find the volume of a rectangular prism, it would be length times width times height. And it says in the problem that the length is 14. No, my marker. I just opened these a week ago and this one is dead. Okay, sorry. Let's try this one then. All right, length of 14, a width of 8 3/10, and a height of 3 centimeters. Now remember, if we were solving a problem with PEMDAS, it would matter the order that we solve the problem in, but since all of the operations are multiplication, we can go in whichever order we would like. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do 14 times 3 because I can sort of do that in my head. I can count 10, 20, 30, and then 34, 38, 42. Okay, so that leaves me with 42 times 8 3/10. Okay, I'm going to put, it doesn't really matter, I'm going to start with 8 3/10 on top. Now remember, when you're multiplying with decimals, I'm just going to erase this. When you're multiplying with decimals, you can estimate first just to see what your answer should be close to. So if I rounded this to 8, it would be 8 times 42, and then I can just estimate. So I know that my answer should be close to this. So if your original answer maybe had the right digits, but your decimal was in the wrong place, of course, it's because maybe if you estimated, that would have helped you first, okay? It's because you just placed the decimal wrong. So my actual problem is 8 3/10 times 42. When I multiply with decimals, I ignore the decimal at first and I multiply as if these were two whole numbers. So 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 8 is 16. I add my placeholder, don't forget that one. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 1 is 33. And then I add those numbers. And if I was going by my estimation, I can see where the decimal should go, but I can also count that there's one place after the decimal. There's no places after the decimal here, so my product will have one place after the decimal. So for Monday number 1, you should have 348 6/10 centimeters to the third power, or cubic centimeters if we're talking about volume, okay? So number 2 is similar. It says the base of a pool measures 375 square feet. If the pool is 8 feet high, how many cubic feet of water will it take to fill the pool? So again, we're looking at volume, but the other formula for volume, instead of length times width times height, would be base times height, because your length and your width are that base. So if the base of the pool is 375 square feet and the height is 8, I'm just going to multiply to figure out the volume, okay? So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 is 60. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 6 is 30. Okay, and again, my answer is in feet, and since it's volume, it's going to be cubic feet or feet to the third power. So for number 2, you should have 3,000 cubic feet for Monday. Okay, Tuesday says when a mystery number is divided by a divisor of 6, the quotient is 54. What is the value of the mystery number? So you have to remember, which part is the quotient and the divisor and the dividend. It says it's divided by a divisor of 6. So remember, if this were to be like a baseball cap, the part that sticks out front, the visor, that's where I'm going to put my divisor. So the divisor is 6. The quotient is the answer that I get when dividing. So the quotient is 54. It's going to go right here. And I'm looking for the value of this mystery number. So basically, I'm looking for the dividend. Okay? And so instead of dividing, I'm actually going to multiply to find this mystery number. Now, you may have accidentally divided and put the numbers in the wrong place. And so say you came up with an answer of 9 because 54 divided by 6 is 9. And I'm pretty sure I put this as an answer choice just to try to be tricky just a little bit. But then you can look back, and I know that 9 divided by 6 is not going to equal 54. 6 is only going to go into 9 once. And so I could see that something is wrong about that because it says the quotient or the answer is 54. So I'm going to multiply to find the answer. 54 times 6. Can you see that color? Okay, hopefully. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 2 is 32. So your answer should be 324. And then you could go back and solve it just to make sure that it's correct and that it works. Okay, number 2 says which number is 825 and 59 thousandths? Okay, so I know that 825 is my whole number, and I think all of the answer choices said that part. Then it says and, which represents my decimal, 59 thousandths. I have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. My number has to land in the thousandths place because it's called 59 thousandths. So I know that 59 is written like this, and if it's going to land in the thousandths place, I need to have my placeholder in the tenths place. Okay, so for that one, your answer should be choice B, it looks like. Wednesday number 1, my favorite, PEMDAS. Wednesday number 1 says evaluate the following expression. So we have 10 squared, or 10 to the second power, minus 3 plus 5, divided by 2 times 4. There is a hair on my sweater and it's driving me crazy. So, okay. So first if I'm thinking PEMDAS, I'm going to start with P for parentheses. 3 plus 5 is 8. And then I can bring down everything else. Remember, every time you solve a part of the expression, it should get a little bit shorter. You're not actually changing the value. This expression equals the same thing as this, which equals the same thing as our very last step. We're just taking it one piece at a time. That's the purpose of the order of operations in PEMDAS. So P for PEMDAS, E for exponents. I know that 10 squared is not 10 times 2. It's not 20. Be careful. It's 10 times itself twice, or 10 times 10, or 2 powers of 10, which would be 100. And then I bring down everything else. Okay, PE, and then MD comes next in PEMDAS. Multiply or divide, whichever comes first in the problem. And I remember telling y'all that this is something a lot of people, even adults, get kind of held up on. They always think it has to be multiplication first, but it's not. It's multiply or divide, whichever comes first in the problem. So in this case, I'm actually going to divide before I multiply, okay? So if I bring down everything else, 100 minus 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then I bring down everything else. Okay, so in PEMDAS, MD, I still multiply, divide before I add or subtract. So next I'm going to say 4 times 4, which is 16. And then bring down 100 minus. Okay, and then 100 minus 10 would be 90, and 90 minus 6 is 84. Okay, and then I could check that. I could say 84 plus 16, 80, 90, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. So the final answer is 84. So this equals 84, this equals 84, this equals 84. All of these lead to that one answer. We didn't change the value anywhere in there. Okay, number 2 for Wednesday. asks you to find the sum, and it's got two mixed numbers. So of course we're going to use the 4 square method for this one to add and subtract fractions. Remember, when you multiply and divide fractions, you don't have to have common denominators, just when you're adding and subtracting. Okay, so Wednesday number 2, I have 2 3/5 plus 1 2/6. And then I think of the big M because I'm going to list the multiples of those denominators. I want a common denominator for 5 and 6. I'm going to count by 5s over here. I'm going to count by 6s over here. So I have 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, 6, 12, 18, 24. I still don't have any multiples in common yet. So I can keep going. 25, 30. And then if I add 6 over here, oh my goodness. If I add 6, I'll have 30. So 30 is going to be my common denominator. And I know some of you remember me telling you the trick that if the denominators are really close, if they're just 1 apart, then typically you're going to multiply those denominators to find the smallest denominator or the least common multiple. So we could have just multiplied 5 times 6 to see that 30 is our common denominator. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the problems. I have 2 and a fraction plus 1 and a fraction, except now my fractions are both going to have 30 as the denominator. We talked about this in the last video, but please remember that whatever you do to the denominator, you have to make it fair, and you have to do the same thing to the numerator. And in last week's video, I warned you that some of you forget that part. You do really, really well on this part, and you get your common denominators, but you forget to change the numerators if you change the denominators. So make sure to keep it fair. Okay, so 5 times 6 is how I got to 30. Or if you weren't sure, you could count your multiples over here. So I'm also going to say 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay, and then for the second fraction, 6 times 5 is what gave me 30. So then I'm going to do the same thing up here. 2 times 5 is 10. And then I'm going to add my whole numbers first. So 2 plus 1 is 3. 18 plus 10 is 28. And then my denominators, since they're common, they're going to stay the same. But you'll notice that 3 and 28/30 was not an answer choice on your quiz. So we're going to simplify. I see that both the numerator and the denominator are even numbers, so they can be divided by 2 without any kind of remainder. So if I say 28 divided by 2, of course my whole number is going to stay the same. But 28 divided by 2 is 14. Oops. And 30 divided by 2 is 15. And that's as simplified as it's going to get, especially if they're 1 apart. Then I know I can't simplify anymore. So my final answer, my final sum is 3 and 14/15. Okay, Thursday number 1 is another fraction problem, but we're not adding or subtracting. We're not doing any operations. It just says, which of the following fractions is not equivalent to 1/2? Okay, and so this one should be pretty easy. We have 8/16. We have 7/12. 9/18 and 5/10. The main thing that I could see being the problem for this question is if you accidentally read too quickly and skipped over the word not, and you just saw which fraction is equivalent to 1/2, and so you just clicked or circled the first answer choice. So be careful, make sure you read it carefully. 3 of them are equivalent or equal to 1/2. You're looking for the one that is not equal. So I know that 8 is half of 16, or 8 plus 8 is 16. I know that 9 is half of 18, or 9 plus 9, or 9 times 2 is 18. And 5 plus 5 is 10, or 5 times 2 is 10. So the one that is not equal is 7/12, which was answer choice B. If this was half, it would have to be either 7/14 or 6/12. Okay, last one, Thursday number 2. Says which fraction can be written as 10 divided by 17. Hopefully you remember our little, okay, there we go. That looks worse. Oh my goodness. All right, hopefully you remember our little chant, our little song about fraction and division. Fraction, bar, and division. It's the same decision. 1 divided by 4 is 1/4 to even the score. Top divided by the bottom. Use division and then you got them. Hey, hey. I was a little bit rusty, and it's not the same without doing it. It's not the same doing it without y'all is what I'm trying to say. But this division is the same thing as a fraction bar. So all I have to do is 10 divided by 17 or 10 divided by 17 or 10/17, which was answer choice B, I believe. And I think I've told you this before. A lot of times on a calculator, sometimes there will be an actual division symbol on calculators, but sometimes, like on my computer at school, there is no division symbol. It's actually just a little fraction bar. So if I wanted to divide numbers on my calculator at school, there is no division symbol. I would have to click the fraction bar because they are the same thing. They equal the same operation. Okay, hope this helps. Bye.